Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Creating Conscious Relationships. I am Catherine Graham.
I'm John Graham.
And we are so excited, so thrilled to be with you guys tonight and to talk further about creating conscious relationships, what that looks like, what that means. And tonight's topic is all about distortions.
Absolutely.
We've had some fun with distortions this week. And just want to share some of our experiences with those distortions, kind of what they look like, what are they, how do they show up. As always, we do invite you guys to join us in on the conversation, ask your questions, share your thoughts, share your experience, and if we can help in any way, we absolutely will. Just throw your comments into the chats, and I guess we'll get started.
Absolutely. Let's do this.
All right. So, distortions. Essentially, distortion to me is a part of yourself that is showing up in a relationship that's based on different aspects of the past. So we've talked to you guys about ego quite a bit over the past couple of weeks. And the ego, when it's showing up in its woundedness, it's often showing up, that woundedness creates kind of distortions within the lens of the person.
Yeah, of your perspective, right?
Yes. And that's where actually we got to experience it this week, was through our perspectives of the exact same situation. And it was through the distortions that we were both unknowingly holding on to, or partially knowingly that we were holding on to, that those distortions then kind of show up. And even though I had an intention of love, and even though he had an intention of love, there was a distortion that was happening that was making both of us kind of go, why aren't you seeing this as love? You know, why aren't you responding in the way I want you to respond? And I think this happens a lot.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm sure that many people have had this same scenario or situation where you've talked to somebody and you've told them, you know, this is what I want, or this is, and they take it totally different than how you're saying it. Yeah. You're saying, you know, I want pizza, and they bring you a slice of bread with pepperoni on it. Well, that's still pizza to somebody, but it's distorted, right?
Example. Yes.
Well, I'm just saying there's plenty of examples where what we perceive, we perceive. Yeah. What the other person or you or whoever perceives is exactly that, is their perception. So you're never going to see things exactly the way that person sees it.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is it doesn't seem to matter what your intention is. If your intention is to be loving, but they're not able to receive it from that kind of lovingness that you're giving, it creates more of a distortion within them. And sometimes it's those distortions that also make them receive it in a way that isn't love. And so essentially what we got to experience this week was he went to defend me in a situation. And when he defended me, I actually felt attacked by him, but not by the person that he was defending me against. When I felt attacked by his defense, then he felt abandoned. And when I went to talk to him about it, he was feeling more abandoned. And I was trying to connect with him, and he was feeling my connection as being abandonment. And so we thought, well, after we kind of figured all that out, it was like, okay, well, this is hilarious. This is, you know, we're both, you know, you're trying to defend me so I don't feel attacked, and I end up feeling attacked through the defense. And you're feeling abandoned, and I'm trying to connect with you, but in that connection, you're feeling more abandoned. And so this is what we mean by a distortion. Okay. And so it's so important that when you're having these conversations with someone, and they're difficult conversations to have, right? It's uncomfortable. You've got all this stuff that's coming up. And it's all connected to things that have happened in the past. They're experiences that you have had that have told you this is what this means. And so in his defense for me, it actually took me back to like a childhood experience where it was like when I was a child, if my parents talked to me like that, that was an attack. And so when I seen it, it was like, whoa, that's an attack. that doesn't feel right or whatever. And for yourself, we were talking about, if someone says, hey, you did this wrong or whatever, then it feels like, no, we're supposed to be on the same team.
Yeah.
And so that's where the abandonment piece started to come in. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those perspectives. However, the intention that each of us was giving was actually a loving intention, but how each of us had received it was then kind of disconnected from what that loving intention was. And sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's where that distorted lens comes in, right? It's all those, when we say that, you think of like this, you can't see through this, right? You guys can't see us. That's distorted through that piece. So all of those influence that you've had with your past or your parents, your friends, family, etc., social media, whatever, dirties that lens a little bit. So you don't really see the full clear picture, or it's a distorted version of that.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as the person that could be experiencing the same thing with you. That's why you experience it a different way.
Yeah. And I think this is why it's so important that when you've got kind of an activated emotional state, or perhaps after you've had an activated emotional state, to really get curious about what is the state that's showing up, what is the emotion that's showing up, and where does it stem from? Because quite often when we're being triggered, it's not because the situation that's happening is, causing that emotion to be in you. It's that emotion has been laying dormant inside of you, and a situation has shown up that is triggering that emotion so that that emotion can be expressed. And often in relationships, we look at the person that we're in the relationship with and we're like, you did this and you caused this and you've made me so angry and you made me feel like this, and whatever the case might be. But really what they've actually done is provided an opportunity for an emotion that's been laying dormant inside of you to come up and to be witnessed by you. Not necessarily by both of you, but by you at least, for you to understand yourself, for you to understand where that pain has been. And so it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be an argument. It's just simply understanding like, oh, we've all got these dormant emotions laying inside of us. And for a lot of us, when we were kids and when we're growing up and whatnot, we take in this world around us and we make it mean a whole lot of things. You know, that's what the brain functions as, is it creates an understanding, I guess I could say, or a lack of understanding around different situations and what that makes or what that means about us or what that says about us. And if there's emotions that are connected to it, we might actually just push those emotions down and go, we can't deal with that right now. We need to survive this, right? And so as we become adults and we're in these adult relationships, and whether it's, you know, with a partner or with a sister or with friends or parents or whatever it might be, there's going to be things that are going to happen that are going to trigger that emotion up inside of you. And we often go, they shouldn't be doing this, you know, and we want to stop that action and stop making me feel this way. You're going to feel that way regardless. It doesn't matter if it's that person or the next person or the next person, because the emotion is inside of you. You're essentially the creator of that emotion. And when you allow yourself to have it come up and to witness it, to be with it, and even like breathe your way through it, don't resist it. Just allow yourself to truly feel that emotion. Then it has an opportunity to be expressed and it starts to lose its emotional charge or the activated charge that it has.
Yeah, and you know, and sometimes the intention, it doesn't match the reception, right?
Yeah.
So and this is where this distortion comes in, right? You can intend to be, I want to do this great loving thing, and it may be that lens that is clouded takes that in as something totally different.
Yeah. And I mean, that goes right back to all of our childhood experiences, right? Like, I know as a parent, we love our kids. We love our kids unconditionally, and you know, through all of their growths and their challenges and all of that sort of stuff, we love them. But there has been times where we've said things to them, or we've done actions that they're like, that wasn't very loving or whatever. And it's like, no, I love you. I love you unconditionally. But sometimes kids can't receive that as unconditional. And I know I didn't with my parents either. You know, sometimes they do these loving things and you're like, why are you doing this?
Well, and sometimes those actions are based off of your past, right?
Yeah.
What you were brought up with, not necessarily a good thing, but it's what you know.
Yeah, and which is also a distortion then.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we're not questioning it and going, is this really truly how I want to be? Is there truth behind this? Is there a reason that I am showing up this way? And if you can find something, awesome. But if you're like, oh, I only say this because this is what my parents said, or this is what
everybody does it.
Everybody does it this way, or whatever it might be. Then it's like, okay, well, what is my actual truth in this? And that's really what the distortions are, is they're almost like a removal from what your truth is. They're a coveted picture of what the truth is that's trying to be expressed through you.
Yeah, you kind of got to clear that piece out and see a little bit more, and then you can actually start to, and these distortions come up every day. So don't think this is like, oh, you know, you can clean your windshield or your whatever and you're good forever. No,
that's like having a shower.
That's not how it works. With your partner, with your friends, family, whoever you're having conversation with or a relationship with, or whatever the case may be, you're always going to have to constantly clear that lens. You're always going to have to take your positionality. Is this right? Is this mine? Do I own this? Nope. Okay, let me wipe this off. Okay, let me take a look at that. How does that look again? And then you can start getting a clearer picture once you start removing that gunk.
Yeah. And in that, when you can, you know, share to your partner, this is what the gunk is that I noticed on my lens today, or this is the gunk that I had on my mirror today, and I had to clear it off. Because just imagine like doing your makeup, if you're a lady or a man, whatever, but if you're doing your makeup and the mirror is like all splattered, you can barely see yourself because it's, you know, maybe it's got toothpaste splatters or like hairspray splatters, or maybe your kids draw words on the mirror well after they have a shower, whatever these are experiences. It makes it much harder to see yourself clearly in that mirror. And it's the exact same thing when you're in relationship with people and you have these distortions on your lens. It's that toothpaste smudge, it's someone who's written on it, it's maybe a crack in the mirror or whatever it might be. And it would be an ideal world if we could just say to people, hey, treat me beautifully and just be loving to me all the time in the way that I want to receive love, not the way you want to give love. And everybody just, you know, did that constantly. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is. And so the only thing that we can truly do is look within ourselves and notice, what distortions do we have? What belief systems are kind of running within us? What childhood experiences are still very active within us? What childhood emotions are still very activated within us? And really, what is our first response? And interestingly, like your first response to a lot of situations is that abandonment. My first response is just feeling attacked, right? And so we can often do this to each other.
Trade it back and forth.
Yeah, just trading it back and forth, but then also kind of switch in those roles of now you're feeling attacked by me and I'm feeling abandoned by you. Yeah. And so when you can have these conversations with each other and to just recognize it. And when you do have, and this, I'm only bringing this up because I've heard of this within other relationships, not that, maybe we have experienced it. I don't want to say that we haven't. But when your partner is telling you something, it's to not tell them, hey, you're not actually feeling like this, or I don't care how you're feeling because you've made me feel like this, and we can, if we're only making it about ourselves, the relationship is very one-sided, right? We want to make sure as we're going into these conversations that we're willing to hold whatever it is that our partner also has coming up. Because yes, it's about us, but it's also about the partner, you know, and your relationship is kind of that third of, okay, let's honor this relationship. We want to keep the relationship going. So let's honor the relationship first and hold space for whatever distortions are coming up. But let's love each other through those distortions. Let's honor each other through those distortions.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to I haven't shared the analogy of the mirror analogy, but it is when you're cleaning your mirror and um, you clean it as best you can, and everybody cleans mirror a little different. But if you don't get right into those corners, you're always going to have a little bit of distortion, and that's okay. Eventually, you're going to have to clean every corner of those mirrors, and you're going to have to do it again. And you're going to find the right tools, and you're going to find the right way to communicate, and you're going to find the right way to clean your mirror. But yeah, going into the conversations of distortion, make sure that you're not holding, or try not to hold, a perspective or positionality of what the actual event is. Try to come in with, okay, this is just this. Yeah. And it's hard because there's already these things that are at play, and distortions and motions and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's more or easier received from both sides if you try to come to from a place of neutrality, where it's like, okay, this is just what it is. Yeah. It's not a personal thing. It's not, I'm pointing the finger. This is just an awareness. And not to hold the person accountable to whatever, there's a certain level of accountability, obviously, but to fix things, to know things, to do this or to do that. Listen and be with each other and try to work through or around those distortions so you can come to a common place. Yeah. Because we can never, as close as we are, we're never going to see things the same. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's your brother, your sister, your mother, your partner. I see this cup. You guys can't see the cup, but I can see this cup. Kate can see the cup, but she sees it different than I see it. And her perspective is different from that. Yeah. And that's every issue, everything that we come across is very much the same. Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of like if I was to take a bite of a dill pickle right now, okay? And I was going to explain to him, this is what the dill pickle tastes like to me. It's crunchy, which I'm like sitting here going, well, crunchy is not a taste. But to me, it tastes crunchy. It's maybe sour, and maybe it has a hint of garlic, and maybe has a bit of salt and whatnot. Now, he might hear all of that and go, well, that's funny, and take a bite of his own dill pickle and go, I do taste the crunchy, but I can't actually taste the garlic. Now, does that mean my perspective is wrong? No. It means my taste bud for garlic right now is more activated. His taste bud for garlic right now is not as activated. So we're having the same thing, but we're both experiencing it a little bit differently.
It tastes this way. Yeah. And that's what... Go ahead.
You can go.
Well, just how many times we try to, no, but do you not see this as this? Yeah. And it's, of course, you can never see it the same or taste it or whatever. You have some of the same or similar sensations, but you're never going to see it exactly the same. And you can't convince somebody to see it your way or to taste it your way or to hear it your way. Yeah. You can't. Yeah.
But at the same time, if you say to your partner, I had a dill pickle today, it was delicious. Your partner can hear that and go, what was delicious about the dill pickle? And, maybe you have a conversation about that dill pickle. And it's such a funny thing to even talk about, but it's like you don't necessarily need them to fully understand your experience with the dill pickle in order for them to know that you've had a dill pickle today, And again, it's a really weird example, but it would be the same if I was to say to him, I got really triggered today. I got so angry. I was, this happened and this happened and this happened. And I was so mad. And he could go, yeah, okay, I understand that. Let's explore that together. Or maybe I'm exploring it and it's connected to this part and this part and this part. And I can understand all of this and stuff. And he doesn't necessarily have to go into anger or go into defense or go into she's attacking me or whatever. It can just be, I'm going to hold space for this. I'm going to recognize that there was something that triggered an anger today. So maybe now I'm dealing with someone who's perhaps feeling a bit more sensitive. Maybe I'm dealing with someone who's already kind of elevated in what their sensations are. So maybe I'm not going to, do the thing that always pisses her off if I do it or whatever,
Yeah, don't take it personal, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is what happened. But and the other thing that I would try to steer clear from is don't try not to be in that same emotion, right? Sometimes we mimic that as where, oh, you're in this bad mood. Okay, now I'm in this bad mood. Okay, now what? Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
It's like, no, just try not to take things personal. I mean, that again goes back to what we're talking about, this distorted lens where you're seeing, you're hearing, whatever. You really just kind of just close your eyes and go, okay, no, this is just, it's not personal. This is just what it is, and take those little pieces and move on from there.
Yeah. And allow yourself to get curious. Like, what is the message that I'm making this situation mean about myself? And it's, I mean, when he was defending me, was it actually an attack on me? It absolutely was not, right? It was my perspective of everything. And the emotional reaction that I had inside of me was very different from what the actual situation was. And I mean, understand, I've been doing this work for quite a while, so I'm able to kind of go, oh, okay, something's activated inside of me right now. Oh, let's get curious about that. And okay, so the feeling that I have right now is feeling terrified. Why am I feeling terrified? Oh, that's connected to being attacked. Okay, let me go into that a little bit more. Oh, there's shame and guilt that's there as well. And, so then I've got these kind of parts that are all playing off over here. And I'm not going, this is all that I am. I'm going, okay, this is what's coming up for me right now. And this is okay. But to get curious about it, to understand yourself better, what is the stories that are attached to that? Because every single emotion has a memory that's attached to it. Whether it's your lived experience or whether it's a generational experience or a past life experience, there's always something that's feeding that emotion into you that you've been holding on to that is now wanting to be expressed through you. Which then...
I was just going to say, and it all comes from somewhere. And unfortunately, it's usually that is distorted as well. You really have to get curious about that, and then kind of refine it, right? It's like, get curious, where did this come from? Okay, but did that really mean what this was? And where did that piece come from? And so you start tracing it back farther and farther, and you have to really be specific when you look at these different situations, scenarios, and things and whatnot.
Yeah, because it's so easy for the ego mind or the wounded self to find itself in a victimization state throughout every emotional experience that we go through. Like, oh, it was so painful, I was the victim, and this is what happened. And we create this whole story around it, and we'll continue to repeat the story almost as like a... We were saying the term earlier this week, juicing the ego, right? Where you reaffirm this story of, I'm a victim. Like, don't you see, I've been a victim here, and I was a victim here, and I was a victim here, and I'm just a victim.
And everything bad.
Yeah.
You and just juice that. They give it more flame.
Yeah, and it's not... I don't want to be a victim in my life. I don't want to look through the lens of the way my ego sees the world and just see myself as being a victim or at the hands of everybody else and at the mercy of everybody else. I want to essentially unravel myself from whatever the experiences were that made me feel like a victim or felt really painful or whatever, and see it from a different perspective of what was actually going on. How can I understand this in a way that allows me to see the divinity that was still happening, the love that was still happening, the people that were still there, the support that was still there. Because a lot of times it doesn't necessarily come from where you think it's going to come from, right? Or the way we've experienced these things is not necessarily um, at first glance, it doesn't look like, oh, this is love. You know, it's, oh, that was a really painful experience. That was humiliating. That was shameful. That filled you with guilt, whatever. Okay, let's, talk to that little part of you that experienced those things and get curious with them. But then also being the adult in that kind of relationship with your inner child to go, okay, so what are the other moving pieces that were happening there? And is it possible that maybe this was happening, or that this was happening, or that this was happening? Because when you start to see, and especially I know everybody who's watching now is an adult, who most likely has had children, or, what we do as parents tends to be out of love. And sometimes when it's not coming from a place of love, it's because there's a lot of other stuff that's going on in the background that our kids can't see, or we're like, I don't want my kids to know about this, or whatever. And so we might snap at them a little bit more. We might get angry, or we might feel overwhelmed or stressed or whatever, which then kind of creates a feedback for the child that they're unloved or they're unworthy or whatever the case might be. And understanding that our parents also went through that. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that I think in most actions or reactions, I think, especially with kids and whatnot, your intention is love. Yeah, it doesn't come off as love, but it may come off as a disciplinary. You take this away from kid. Well, yeah, but I'm trying to correct this, and it really, when you start drilling it down, and then what, and then what, and then what, it is from a loving intention.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
But again, it becomes, how does the person receive it?
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't present itself as love. It
Yeah.
feels much the opposite. But underneath that, it really is from a loving intention place.
Yeah. And understanding, too, that in our parents' own capacity or ability of being able to be loving, they might also carry a lot of distortions as to what that actually looks like. Right? So there's a lot of experiences that I know of just from having clients in, where when they describe their dad to me, this is for like a generational healing, but when they describe their dad to me, they're going, he went to work and he provided for us. So yeah, he was a good man. And it's like, okay, who was he as a man though? And a lot of people don't know. But to them, that's the most loving thing dad could do, was go to work and pay the bills. That was love, and, or with mom, she was, she provided everything after dad left, and so life was really hard for her and whatnot. And so, and even if there is, maybe dad works every day, but he's drunk every weekend, but we're going to overlook that because we know dad loved us because he worked every day. But then we wonder, why do I feel unworthy, or why do I feel ashamed about who I am, or why do I feel like men don't love me, or whatever it might be. And it comes back down to those kind of distorted ideas that we received about love when we were young children. And I can even remember times where I was getting disciplined or punished, really, where it's like, well, I'm doing this because I love you, and then it's like, a smack on the ass, and I would go like, how was that love? That doesn't make sense to me. But for what their experience was when they were growing up, that was also told to them as, this is an act of love, because as a loving parent, I need you to act this way. And that's a very distorted idea of love, and we need to understand where their distortions are, to understand where our own distortions are, and to understand our partner's distortions as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is maintenance, right? I mean, it is root cause analysis, maintenance, and it is, you have to be consistent about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a huge fallacy when it comes to doing the healing work, is everybody thinks there's kind of a final destination. I'm going to arrive to this place at some point, and I'm just going to be happy for the rest of my life, and I'm just going to feel amazing for the rest of my life. I'm going to know it all and have all this stuff healed. And it's I don't want to say it's so far from the truth, because I do believe you can reach a certain level where you're not as activated by things, or when things are activated, they're not taking over. And to me, that's ultimately the goal, is allow things to still get activated, but have an awareness of, oh, this is being activated. I'm not going to let it take over.
Yeah, and it's just it's another example of a distortion, right? To say that you can get to the end place. You can get to the... No, okay, we all don't want to get to the end place, but we all want to be in the end place. Because the end place is you're no longer here, and you're in that full back to source.
Yeah.
So what is it? It's very much a distortion. You're right. There is no end. It is, you have to find that part, that highest piece, where you're comfortable at.
Yeah.
And what level you're at and where you are in your journey.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going to come back to like when we talk about healing and the kind of distortion that can happen around that is if we think the point of healing is that we're not going to have sadness anymore, or we're not going to have anger anymore, or we're not going to have frustration or shame or guilt or whatever these emotions are that are, coming up for you, you're going to be very disappointed with healing work.
Yeah.
Because the healing work is really about not allowing these things to just take over, not allowing these things to become the narrator or the director of your life, and not just the only lens in which you can see your life. So if you're someone who's angry, then it doesn't matter what anybody says to you. There's going to be anger that's activated within you, and you're going to lash out. And if you're doing the healing work, you might go, well, why are these people always still making me so angry? They're not.
I thought I cleared all these anger pieces, and then you find another piece, and you find another piece, and you find another piece, and you find other pieces.
Yeah, and it's kind of delaying. What is that reaction? So you might have anger come up, and you go, oh, there's anger. Now, okay, so there's anger there. I'm feeling this a lot in my body. I'm feeling it in my heart center. I'm feeling it in my solar plexus, maybe down in my sacral chakra as well. And I'm just really feeling this anger. Okay, why is it here? What part of me is wanting to protect me from whatever this experience is? What part of me is feeling like it's being attacked? What part of me is feeling unsafe? Because anger, understand, is a very protective kind of emotion. So it's really feeling like there's a part inside that is the victim. There's a part inside that is powerless. There's a part inside that perhaps is really sad, and the anger is trying to protect that sadness from being seen. So you have to get curious about it. You have to allow, you don't have to. I encourage you to just get curious about it and understand, why is this being activated? And not to go, I don't ever want to feel angry again. Feeling angry means you are in a human experience right now, and you found kind of an edge to yourself that has activated this, and now it's an opportunity to kind of bring it up and look at it and go, okay, can we turn this back into love, or can we turn this back into peace or neutrality or joy or whatever?
Or you definitely stir something in the ego, right? That's what anger is. The ego is offended.
Yes.
Or is wrong, or is whatever, and is looking to lash out, doesn't like what's going on. So it's more impactful for you to understand where that came from and where it resonates and why, so you can kind of come to that understanding with the ego as to, okay, now I understand why you were, why that anger comes up.
Yeah. Yeah, because once you can understand it, then it's like it doesn't come up and come over. It's more like, oh, there's anger that's activated here. Cool. Yes. Oh, look at me. I've got my anger with me today. This part of me is really activated, and it's just going to sit here while I chat with you guys. And it can be there without us becoming angry. It can be there without us
consuming it.
Right. Yeah, and projecting it onto people as well. Because often we do that. We feel the anger, and then we become the monster, become the beast, to let everyone else know how angry we are.
And then we want everybody to be angry with us. And we want
or to fight back and forth. Yeah. Like, I want you to be as angry as me right now. It's just so I can get this kind of energy out. And it's like, well, that's not going to help either. It's actually just going to add on more anger down the road and more things for us to enumerate about and whatever. And so with the anger, with the sadness, with the disappointment, with the grief, with the shame, the guilt, all of these kind of lower density emotions or heavier emotions that we all experience, understanding that they're often attached to what these distortions have been within our lives.
Well,
right?
what looks on the other side of that lens, right, may look like pain or anger or hate, but once you start cleaning it, you go, oh, it's actually love that's under there, or it's actually like happiness that's there, but it didn't look right. It looked,
Yeah.
So when you start cleaning that out and doing the work and
Yeah, as you say that, I get the image of, remember those magic eyes that were like in the newspaper on Saturday mornings, and you'd stay there. Yeah, you relax your eyes and you stare at the photo, and then suddenly this brand new image just appears. And I guess it's kind of the same. If you allow yourself to look at the distortion long enough and kind of see what is the actual form that was trying to take place there. Because everything is love, essentially, but there's a lot of distortions that make it feel like it is not love, that it's the opposite of love. Or we'll even go, you know what, I'm not loving anymore, I'm going to close myself down because this is not an experience of love, and then we separate ourselves even further from that love. So it can be really tricky to navigate, and yet it can become kind of exciting to start to recognize, oh, I've got this part, and this part is angry. Okay, cool, let's talk to this part. As I was saying to him last night, I become like the character of whatever the parts are. I'm like, okay, so I've got this part, and this is what this part is saying, and I've got this part, and this is what this part is saying, but I've also got this part, and it's kind of seeing it like this.
She's going to be doing a puppet show there.
I keep making a joke about how I should do a puppet show of like me literally being in like an activated state and having puppets for each of the parts that are showing up, and the voices and what the memories have been and whatnot, to show people how it kind of works, because I don't know.
No.
Yeah, it's probably something that I should do. It just, if that feels vulnerable to do that out loud, but healing out loud, I think that's what we should all be doing more of, so more people can actually see what healing looks like and how it can be experienced. So maybe that is healing out loud. That's what the puppet show will be called, is healing out loud. I invite you guys, if you do have any questions or comments that you want to share, please pop them into the chat. And we would love to have you guys be a part of these discussions and to hear your thoughts and to even hear your resistances that might be coming up because of what we're sharing.
Well, you were saying about your characters, where I don't have a character. I just look at, this is part of the discussion we had, is here's another distortion. Catherine was very much under the impression that everybody has these characters that are all, and sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. When it comes to, when we were talking about like looking at our past and where things come from, she's got all these characters going on. I'm like, yeah, I remember this stuff happening, but it happened, and we're moving on. And
I'm like, let's go into character.
No, there was this person and this and this and this and this and this, and I'm like, okay. But now live, you get to see how our distortion came into play.
Yeah, because for myself, it's almost like when I'm seeing these kind of the wounded parts, it's like, okay, so there's a sadness voice here, there's the anger voice here, there's the part of me that's able to see kind of, oh, both of them are existing here. There's the feelings that I'm feeling in here, and it's a whole play that's going on inside of my head. And for him, it's almost like he's looking at it from like a bird's eye view,
an aerial view,
and he's seeing the pieces move and stuff, and he's getting an understanding of it, where for myself, I'm very much feeling it in my body and experiencing it and hearing the voices, and not in a kind of,
you're almost reliving it, and I'm witnessing it, right? I'm the silent observer viewing what is going on.
And so there's not one way that's correct to do it, that they're both correct and they both lead to the same results, but it's about finding what works for you to be able to understand these different parts and the different kind of players or characters that are in the game.
And start small. You know, like we talk about some pretty in-depth things and whatnot, and but you'll start to see these little, you can see these distortions in some of the simplest things. Like, you just ask your partner how they see this or how your friend sees that. and you'll quickly see that there's a difference.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, some things it doesn't really matter. Everybody knows what the color red is, and but to somebody who's a designer, well, the color of red really depends on,
They've got 50 shades of red. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, like, we've got one child who's colorblind, so what is red to them is completely different. So, again, all in that perspective. And I was just going to say, as you were sharing that, there's been studies released that, like, a witness of an accident, it doesn't matter how many witnesses there are, nobody actually remembers any of the details. The brain fills in a bunch of details that don't actually exist there.
Yeah.
And so our brains are very creative and also very manipulative, right? If you've got an ego part that's showing up or a wounded part that's showing up, it is going to manipulate all other parts of you to believe this one story, and it can be tricky to navigate because we feel it to be the truth of who we are, but it's not necessarily the truth of who we are. It's a distorted part of who we are that we're now seeing as being the truth.
Yeah, it's funny because that witnessing piece, there is truth to that because they've done studies on that. But it's like the Mandela effect as well, right?
Yeah.
So now we wonder why we have these dispositions or like clouded vision or whatever when you have all these things that you can't even trust yourself of what your history was, your memory. You can't trust the memory of the past because you're not necessarily lying to yourself, but it's not the truth because you're now removed from that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And your brain will fill in whatever
So
gaps there has been in your reality. It was actually something that we learned when he had a cousin who had overdosed, and when it came time to the funeral, there was kind of question about should the kids come to the funeral, should they not come to the funeral, how much information do we give them about this experience and whatnot. And it wasn't to me directly, but to one of the other family members who was going to the funeral. The funeral director had said to her, let the kids come and tell them as much as possible, because what you're not telling them, their brain is going to fill in with the blanks, and you don't know what those blanks are. So they could make up this big kind of story.
Don't create more distortion.
Yeah, don't create more distortion, to give them the facts, because that's what kids are looking for. And I think that's really what all of us as humans are looking for, is just, what are the facts here? Help me fill in the gaps where I've got these distortions that are showing up. And that's where I think it's important to ask the question of, like, what is your perspective on this? What is the way in which you're seeing this?
And that's why it's good to deal with things as they come up, right? Because as we just said, that, like, our memory of what happened 2 weeks ago is, we're not telling ourselves the truth.
Yeah.
We're not trying to not tell ourselves the truth. But unless you're journaling absolutely everything and every little detail, you're not going to remember everything specifically the way it happened, because it will not be.
Oh, it's impossible. And I even think, like, today, I'll just use today as example. If I could tell you everything that I did from the moment I woke up until this moment, there's been a lot of hours that have passed, and there's like, oh yeah, I got groceries, did the membership call, I ate supper.
there's gap that you fill in.
Yeah.
Right?
And gaps of periods of time. And that was another thing. I like that you said about bringing it up in real time, like as things are being activated and as you're feeling all these emotions, because it can be so easy to go, I'm just going to let it slide for this week. Yeah. And I'm going to let it slide next week and next week and next week. And then next thing you know, you've got 10 years of built up resentment that hasn't been expressed, hasn't been talked about. And now you're telling yourself, they have always done this. For as long as I can remember, they've always been this way. And there might have been some really great experiences intermixed with that. But because there's been all of this unexpressed emotion that's been happening, now they are always the bad guy. They've always done this. They always don't care. They always neglect me. They always. Yeah. And if you take that time to go, hey, what exactly did this mean? I've got this thing activated. You did this thing, and I don't really know. What did you mean by that? What were you trying to express?
I don't think you need to come to a full resolution. Like, I don't think but address it. Like, hey, this came up, and try to, like, either try to keep the conversation going, try to find a resolution. I mean, ideally, we want to have some common ground where we can move on and go, okay, yeah, that was, I was an idiot, you were an idiot, let's move on.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Because that can happen.
But if you can't get to that place, at least find, like, okay, this is not done. We're going to revisit this. We're going to work on this. Don't let it just, let's just sweep it under the rug. Because then, you know what? Again, that's where, as you're saying, it's like throwing weights on your hips and trying to swim. And you're just adding more weights, and you're not going to go very far.
Yeah, eventually you're going to just sink. Yeah.
And then you're going to say, hey, why aren't you swimming with me? Well, I've got these weights I've got on my...
Yeah. And it can be so easy to just stuff it down, especially if you're someone who felt like your voice didn't matter when you were growing up, or that if you did vocalize yourself, maybe a parent kind of hashed out at you or told you to be quiet, or maybe you got punished in some way or whatever. And so you learn to shut down and to not talk about it. And if that's been your experience, then I would invite you or challenge you to go, okay, let's see what else can happen if you start to express yourself. And to understand that expressing yourself doesn't mean that everybody's going to listen and they're going to celebrate and whatever that you're saying, but it's really about you speaking your truth, you using your voice, you articulating what those emotions are. And it doesn't necessarily have to be to someone else. It could be you sitting in front of a phone just like I am now, maybe not live on Facebook, but maybe you've got your camera open and you're doing a video to yourself and you're talking to yourself, telling yourself, this is how I truly feel. Because a lot of times it's that emotion just wants to be expressed. And sometimes it can just be that feeling, letting that feeling come up and over you and you're not in resistance to it. A lot of times you want to talk about it. And talking about it allows it to kind of be up and out here in the world, so that it's no longer laying dormant inside of you and really feeling like a trapped beast. That's how I see it, as like this animal that's in a cage and it really wants to get out. And then if we, slap it back in the cage every time it tries to come out, it's never going to become a nice, calm kind of animal. It's always going to be like ready to be triggered and attack. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, here we are.
Yes, I would invite you all to just kind of look at what are the kind of dominant emotions that have been coming up for you.
Well, sorry, I was going to say the other thing that I wanted to add to that was, if you have a distorted perspective on something, again, we said about it, get curious about it. You don't have to resolve it, but just at least get curious about is this my partner, or is this something else? Or is this something else? And just try to work through that piece. Yeah. And again, start small. Always start small. Baby steps. Yeah.
And I would say 95% of the time, I'm not going to say 99.9, even though that's what I want to say, but I'm going to drop it down to 95% of the time. It has nothing to do with your partner or who the other person is within the relationship. It has to do with what is alive in you, that because of a series of circumstances and events and whatnot that's happening outside of you, it has activated these emotions inside of you. And again, that's okay. You can allow yourself to be in those emotions as long as you want. But if you're someone who's trying to heal yourself and trying to move away from pain and suffering and into a state of more peace, that's where I would go, okay, get curious about why are these emotions showing up? Why are they distorting your lens? What are the beliefs that are distorting your lens? What are the really almost like stronghold limitations that you're holding on to that won't allow you to see beyond what you're currently seeing?
Yeah, it's toothpaste on the mirror.
Yes.
That's been there for a week and it's hard to get off.
Well, and it's funny because when I was a kid, I loved to put my thumb on my toothbrush and like you flick the toothpaste and then it makes a nice little sprinkle on the mirror or whatever. So I loved that. As an adult, I'm like, why do my kids love doing this? Or how are they brushing their teeth that it's like all over the mirror or whatever. But again, it shows how we can kind of shift and change and how we can sometimes add to the distortions of our own lives over time.
Yeah, you dirty your own mirror, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier too, is like, how many times have you, distorted your own lens from other perspective or whatever, or jealousies or this, that, or whatever. And it's like, why? What? You're doing this to yourself.
Yeah.
We already have enough big enough challenges with our lenses being the way they are from just in general being our past or just where we are and how we got here. But now we're going to do it to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And we do. And then there's plenty of examples how we self-sabotage ourselves. And that's basically what you're doing is you're not being able to see what you want to see. So I'm going to throw whatever at it, whether it's alcohol or addiction or food or this or that. I'm going to dirty that lens anyway. So
yeah. Yeah. And I think really be graceful with yourself and with your partner, to understand that we all are just human, and none of us has been taught how to deal with emotions. None of us has been taught how to express emotions. None of us has been taught how to perfectly heal from day one when we arrive here on this earth. And our parents definitely weren't taught that either. And so to have grace for anybody that you're in relationship with, and especially yourself, to go, hey, mistakes happen and distortions happen and wrong perspectives happen and sometimes wrong actions happen too. But to allow for that grace, for the humanness that is within each of us, to not be like, I would never do that. There's a possibility that you could do that. There's a possibility that you've already done that. There's a possibility that you're doing it right now in this moment, Or
you're creating it for somebody else.
Yes, or you're creating it for someone else intentionally or unintentionally.
Absolutely.
And when you can remember.
And we're back. Hi.
Okay, here we're back now. Okay. Our
See,
connection
our energy is so powerful it just knocks out the network.
Yes. So, as I was saying, oh gosh, I'm frozen on such an unattractive kind of state. But we're all human and we all make mistakes. And just like the internet just froze there, sometimes we just freeze on the spot and we don't connect. Hearing. Okay, we're back again. Okay, not sure if you guys can hear us or not. I see the hearts and thumbs coming in. But it essentially, sometimes disconnection happens. Sometimes we can be doing our best to be connected. We can be doing our best to not have distortions in the field, and the line drops. And I mean, it's like literally half distortion. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody who's still here and who's still being very patient with us.
We're causing distortion and disconnection tonight.
Yeah, and this is how easily it can happen. And really, it's showing up in the field right now as we're bringing this call to an end. Even though it's not our intention for the internet to keep dropping, we're on like the 5G network right now, so it should not be dropping. I'm on the 5G network for that reason, and yet it's still dropping. So my intention is correct, but how my phone is receiving it and how Facebook is, I'm getting a little bit annoyed by it. So
we're back again.
There's a trigger that's happening for me right now over this disconnection, and that's okay. But I hope you guys are understanding what we're talking about when it comes to the distortion and the disconnection that can easily happen when we're trying to connect, when we're trying to love, when the distortions just show up. So we are getting to the end of our call this week, and this is funny.
So just before we do go on to our questions and whatnot, I just wanted to make mention that we did have a dinner the other night. We had the Pilgrims dinner.
Yes.
And there might be some people that are watching the call and whatnot. It was a great dinner.
Yes.
And I can't wait for the next one. We'll have to figure out when we're going to.
So we're going to figure out when we're going to do the next one, but what were you saying?
I was going to say, this was one of the, we used as an icebreaker, right?
Yes.
Just random questions, just to kind of get to know us better or each other better.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not distorted, and hopefully it stays connected.
Yes. And what's funny is I actually pulled the same question that I pulled last night at our pilgrims dinner, which is, what is your biggest fear? And last night I had said that my biggest fear was to not express myself fully and live a completely fulfilled life. And yet after the dinner, I recognized that actually one of my biggest fears is that people don't change, and that it's, that we'll always just kind of stay in a disconnected place, or we'll always stay in a distorted place. And it's my true vision to have a loving, healed world. And anything that is removed from that is like, well, I hope we can move beyond this. And whether it's in this lifetime or a next lifetime or in 500 lifetimes, that I think that's my biggest fear, is that we're all here and we're all working towards this thing, but that maybe we just don't get there. And that makes me sad. Maybe not fear, but it makes me sad. What's your biggest fear?
Well, there's a lot of things that you can or don't have to fear. I mean, really comes down to perception. But you're doing this work and thinking about it, it's like, I guess some of the fears that I have are how I don't want to ever affect somebody negatively unintentionally. I know that, we all think things happen for a reason, but that would be kind of one of my fears, is that, somebody had taken something the wrong way. The intention is that it's all good, and that we're putting this message out for the betterment. But yeah, the fear would be that that's taken the wrong way, or it triggers something in somebody, and that is not a favorable outcome.
I totally get that.
But I get it. These things do happen, and distortions happen, and disconnection happen. But yeah, I think that would be my biggest fear, that or you're not understood the way you're intended to be.
Yeah, the way that you're trying to speak, and I mean, I've had that experience with clients throughout the years, where like doing a reading and stuff, and I tell them, this, and this, and they go, oh, this, and they go and do the opposite thing of what I just said, and I'm like, well, how did I say that they took it that way?
Was I speaking the right words?
Yeah, and then you kind of question and go, how can I become, and this has kind of been my thing for like the past year-ish, I don't know, about being more impeccable with my word, being more in alignment with what I'm actually trying to say, and even understanding the words, like where did they originate from? What was the original meaning behind them? So that I'm making sure I'm using the correct words. So I totally understand that fear. I think I have that fear too.
Words seem to be a big thing, and I don't know, it just kind of came out of nowhere, where it's like we're looking up definitions. And don't get me wrong, we know the definition of words, but we're looking for where did the word come, where did it originate, and how did it evolve, and what is the true essence of that word. So.
Yeah, because even like, I don't know, a random word, we'll say love. Love means so many different things to so many people. And so when I say, like, I want the world to love each other, like everybody can hear that in such a different way.
What was the last word that we looked up? Was it cadence?
Yes, cadence. Because you had said it's really about the cadence of how things are said. Yeah. And I was like, well, what does that word really truly mean? And it was like, it's the beat in which things are played out. But it's also when you're speaking, I tend to go up at the end of a lot of my sentences, as you can see. But when I'm doing like a compassion key sentence or a compassion key statement, I tend to actually go down at the end of the sentences. So that cadence, it can go down, which kind of wraps people in a bit of a hug at the end of a sentence.
And there's much more to the cadence. Like we went right into the history of where it came and whatnot. So I'm just giving you an idea of what we say. Words are, we go deep with words. This is
because it also meant to like kill off. Is that correct? There was something about things coming to an end, but I feel like it was like with life, it comes to an end. It's like the cadence of life at the end to kill off. Or don't quote me on that, because I'm not necessarily being impeccable on my word, because I am kind of remembering, but I'm not 100% remembering. Anyways, that is the fun we have with words. I feel like we could be like Amy and Sheldon.
Fun with words.
Yes, instead of fun with flags. If you're fans of Big Bang Theory, you'll understand what we're talking about. And if not, watch the show and you'll understand. But yeah, we have been having a lot of fun in discovering the true meanings behind words. Anyways, thank you everybody who has joined us. Thank you everyone for your patience as we were getting connected and disconnected. As always, if you guys have anything you want to share, if anything brought up a resistance in you or a trigger in you, or you're like, I want to dive deeper into this, by all means, reach out. We're both happy to have a conversation, to answer any questions that you might have, and looking forward to connecting with you guys again next Sunday. Have a great night.
Take care, folks.